This is reaction number 1. So for this reaction, we are going to take a strip of copper, which is in this container here. Looks like that. There's my copper. I am going to put that using some non-rubber tipped tongs into my Bunsen burner flame. I'm going to allow it to react with the oxygen in the air, and we're going to see what happens to it. So let me try and pick this up with one hand. So we're going to grab that. With our tongs. I'm going to put this into our flame. Allow it to react. You can kind of see it turning. Here we go. Kind of changing colors. Put it back in. I'm going to try it and scrape some of this off. So I don't know if you can see it, but that is my attempt to scrape some of the product off. So it does come off, it just takes a little work. And then you can kind of see the, I can't hold this very steady, the copper underneath it. This is reaction number 2. I am going to burn a piece of magnesium in a Bunsen burner. Once it's starting to burn, it'll be very obvious. I'm going to hold it over this clay pad just so that it does not drop all over the table. And I'm going to hold the piece of magnesium, which is in a ribbon form. So this is the magnesium. I'm going to hold that with a pair of non-rubber tongs. Obviously, if they were coated in rubber, the rubber would melt. So I'm going to get my Bunsen burner started, and then I'm going to get to the burning. I'm actually going to turn the light off as well. I'm going to light my Bunsen burner first. Here we go. All right, so now I'm going to take my magnesium piece with my tongs, and I'm going to put it into the flame, and once it starts burning, I'm not going to look at the piece of magnesium directly because it could burn my retinas. You will understand why in a minute. And then as soon as it starts burning, I'm going to put it over the clay pad. Very bright light. That's reaction number 5, or number 2. That's reaction number 2. Now we're going to do reaction number 3. So we are going to use this copper 2 carbonate. We're going to put 2 scupulas of this into a test tube, and then we are going to heat that over my Bunsen burner, and we are going to test it for a gas as it goes using something called the splint test. So I'm going to grab my scupula over here. This is a scupula. I also am going to grab a splint or 2 or 4 and a match can. This match can is for putting the splints out once they are on fire, just so that they have time to cool off and that they go out. Because if you just throw a hot splint into a garbage can, you could start my garbage can on fire, and we don't want that. So I'm going to grab that stuff. I'm going to move some of this out of the way. I'm going to start by putting a couple scupulas of this into a test tube. Do a little bit more. That's what the copper carbonate looks like. Oops. It's a nice teal color, turquoise, I don't know. Going to put a cover back on there. Now, I have it in my test tube. I'm going to try and kind of spread it out in my test tube. There we go. You can do it. There it is. I am going to put that into a test tube clamp. So I have an iron ring, or a ring stand, there we go here. It's just a big heavy metal base with a steel rod sticking out of it. And then I have a clamp here that I attach to the steel rod, and then I can put my test tube into this clamp. So I'm going to loosen it. There we go. Based on the height of my flame, I don't know if you can see it very well, it's a pretty high flame. I'm going to move this up a little bit. So all you have to do for that is unscrew this back screw. There we go. And you can move it up and down. We'll do that. Okay, so I'm going to move my Bunsen burner underneath my copper carbonate very carefully. We're going to heat it. So I have my copper carbonate sitting under my flame. I'm going to test this for a gas using the splint test. So that just means that I'm going to let a splint catch on fire, and I'm going to insert it into the tube. And if the flame goes out, that means that there's carbon dioxide gas being produced in the test tube. Because remember that flames require oxygen in order to remain as a flame. And so if I put it into my test tube and the flame goes out, that means that there's no oxygen, but that carbon dioxide is being produced. And you can see that there is a gas being produced. That might be also some smoke. My copper carbonate is burning a little bit, so I'm going to turn this off. But again, since my flame on the splint, when I put it into the test tube, went out, that means that there was carbon dioxide being produced. If the flame were to have kept burning when I put it into the test tube, that means that there was oxygen gas being given off by the solid decomposing. If there was another type of gas being given off, like hydrogen gas, sometimes when you put the splint into the test tube, you get like a kind of like a firecracker sound because the flame is reacting with the hydrogen gas and it kind of sparks. So that is reaction number 3. Next, we are going to do reaction number 4. So for that one, we are going to put 3 pipettes of the 6 molar hydrochloric acid into a test tube. And then I'm going to add a piece of zinc. That's what the zinc looks like. To that test tube, and then I am going to test it for a gas using the splint test. So I'm going to start with the hydrochloric acid. I'm going to do 3 pipettes of that. This is very strong. I don't want to get it on myself. Would give me a chemical burn that I don't want. And 6 molar is pretty strong, so we're not going to touch that. So that's my hydrochloric acid, and then I'm going to just add my piece of zinc. That's what it looks like. Add that in. You can see that there's a gas being produced, so I'm going to test that using the splint test. You could hear it popping. Try it one more time. This is reaction number 5. So I am going to put 5 milliliters of this 0.2 molar copper 2 sulfate solution into a test tube. And then I'm going to drop a piece of zinc into that same test tube, and I'm going to let it sit and react. So first I need to measure out my copper 2 sulfate. Copper 2 sulfate is kind of a blue color, and I'm going to put that into my graduated cylinder. I'm down at eye level because remember that aqueous solutions, or solutions that contain water, are going to form a meniscus, and you need to read from the bottom of the meniscus. And the reason that water forms a meniscus is because of adhesion. Water is attracted to other substances, and so it is attracted to the sides of the container, pulling it up and forming that meniscus. So I have 5 milliliters in there. I'm going to recap my solution. I'm going to pour this into a test tube. But first I'm going to label that test tube. So here's my test tube. I'm going to just label it with the number 5. So there, I labeled it number 5, so that's reaction 5. I'm going to pour in my copper 2 sulfate. Nice and blue. And then I have some zinc here. I'm going to uncap this. See what the zinc looks like before I put it in. It is kind of a silvery white piece of metal, very irregularly shaped. I'm going to drop that into my solution. This is what it looks like right now, but we are going to let it sit. You can kind of see something already happening here. We're going to let it sit for a little bit. All right, so I let this sit for probably around 10 to 15 minutes. This is what it looks like now. I'm going to take that piece of zinc out of this test tube. On this paper. There it is. And you can kind of see that it is coated now in copper. That's a copper coating. Still reacting, but there is now a copper coating around the zinc. All right, next we are going to do reaction number 6. So we have 0.1 molar zinc acetate, clear color, and 0.1 molar sodium phosphate, also clear in color. And we are going to start with 2 pipettes of the zinc acetate into a test tube that I already labeled with the number 6. And then we are going to add some sodium phosphate until we see a change. So I'm going to start with put this in here, 2 pipettes of the zinc acetate. Might have to do more so that you can see it. I'm going to double it. That's good. So there's our zinc acetate, and then I'm going to add a little bit of sodium phosphate to this until I see a change. There is the result. That white stuff is called a precipitate. That is a solid coming out of solution. Looks like a snow globe. That is reaction number 6. All right, this is going to be reaction number 7. So we are going to start with 2 pipettes of a 6 molar hydrochloric acid in this test tube. And this is fairly strong acid, so I'm going to take my time, use 2 hands to open it. I'm going to put 2 pipettes of the hydrochloric acid into my test tube. And then to that, I am going to add a marble chip, also known as calcium carbonate. So CaCO3, also known as marble chips. Look like this. Literally just look like a little pebble. And I'm going to drop that into my test tube, and then I'm going to perform the splint test again to see if there is a gas being given off, and if so, which one is being given off. So here we go. I'm going to put it into my test tube. Here I go with my splint. Try that again. don't know if you can hear it. I'm waiting for some of the smoke from the flame to clear out so I can try it again. Let's try it again. Flame going in. And that is reaction number 7.